Hello, I'm Lauren, and welcome to Improving the World. I'm an international improviser based in Hong Kong, and I talk to amazing women of improv all over the world. Today, I talk to Charlotte, aka Charlie De Metsenaere. I'm going to make it sound so Italian, but she is Belgian, and I do not have a Flemish accent. She's in Leuven, Belgium, and we talk about education within the context of improv. Charlie has traveled all over teaching improv, and we look at how culture plays into it, gender plays into it, your background, all those things. It's very intriguing, I promise. I hope that you like it. All right, hello everyone. Welcome to Improving the World. Today I am joined from, watch me butcher this, Leuven, Belgium. Yeah, I got that right one of the 12 times I tried it. You are a director and improviser, but also more specifically, you teach improv to the young and old alike.
Yeah, all ages, from 9 upwards.
Tell me, how do you try to use the craft and skills of improv and integrate it into molding the minds of young people, bringing them into the cult?
What most people forget, I find, is that the mind of a kid is like what Key Johnson says, you don't grow up, all you do is learn how to behave in public. I really like that quote because kids are brilliant. They have so much vivid fantasy. They take risks. They are on the edge of finding huge inspiration. We just have to help them, because what's happening now with kids is we're putting them in boxes and we're telling them not to do stuff, not to talk, not to move. In schools nowadays, even over the past 30 years, it seems like nothing has changed. They have to sit still, they have to be quiet. But then when it's artsy hour, they have to be as creative as possible. What I'm trying to do with the improv classes that we teach is to just allow them to be themselves again and to discover and experiment and make mistakes. Go all out. Go back to what you really wanted to do. I'm not teaching them anything. I'm trying to allow them to be themselves. Of course, with respect to the other person. They have to respect the others in the room and the teacher in the room and the stuff in the room. But other than that, there are no rules. So
I love this idea that maybe you're sending kids home to their parents, they're 9, and they come home and they're like, no, mom, there's no rules. Let me be free. And the parents are like, oh my God, they came back from improv. She broke them.
Exactly. Well, actually, what we're getting back from parents is that we change their lives. It's weird because I wouldn't say this if only one parent said that, but it's reoccurring that parents are emailing us saying, you changed my kid's life. And I'm not only talking about 9-year-olds, especially in puberty. I recently had a boy, 15-year-old, who came to me and said, I feel like this classroom is the only place where I can be myself. And it's great. And it's sad at the same time because you're like, okay, thank you. And how can we now help you to be yourself all the time, you know? What parents most say is that we learn their kids to lie really good. That's also not my intention, but that's what we're getting back.
You're creating small bank robbers. Tell me about your House of Improv concept. You have this devilish plan of yours. Do let us know what it is. Yeah.
My dream, and I'm talking long term, let's say 5 years time, is to have a hub, a house of improv, where improv is celebrated as an attitude, as a vision, as a muscle that you can use in daily life. And I want to create something that teaches that within the form of theater, but also away from theater. I want to offer improvised photography, dancing, making music, but the common goal is to have all my teachers, I call them masters of the arts, they have to have the same vision as me, which is improv needs to be the key point on how to learn it, how to live it, and how to try and fail and keep going and stuff like that. So yeah, that's my concept. I want to create a house of improv that goes way beyond theater.
For young people, or this is all ages?
All ages.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's kind of beautiful. I feel like I'm ready to invest. Do you want all of my money?
I want all of your money.
Okay, I will give it to you. I'm sold. Students that you teach, the people that you see, whether they are young and old, what's old mean? Do you see that gender, I have to ask, is represented evenly as the age distribution changes?
It's really weird, but I've been teaching kids for 8 years now. And overall, I would say it starts with a lot more girls than it ends. if we go up the scale, we see a lot of women dropping out. And I would say majority is girls in primary school, and by the time of adolescence, and let's say 30 plus, majority is male.
Okay, so I could make a bunch of guesses why, and I'm gonna go with my top choices, but I wanna know what you think. I am gonna guess that some of this is to do with like, society says it's time for me to procreate and bake. Not that that is what society actually says or what you actually need to do, but I think that some people are hearing that messaging. I just totally took a whole bunch of society and like trashed it. Is it about external media and concepts? Do you think that's what it is?
I also feel too humbled to make any truth out of that. And I'm sure some Belgian improvisers will disagree with me that more men are active than women. I'm just speaking from my own experience. If I keep speaking from my own point of view, it's not just society, it's also women making that choice. A lot of women in my age group, there is still this biological need to be with your kid rather than your husband or your partner. So it's not just society, it's also the women's natural wish that they feel that, I'm just speaking for a couple of friends that I know, that they say, I prefer to stay home with my kids and raise them to the best that I can. And then once they're 18, I'll go back to doing my hobbies. And I see this way more in my female friends than in my male friends. My male friends, they just keep doing what they're doing. This is generalizing a little bit, but I'm just speaking from the people I spoke to.
Yeah. I am nodding and doing a lot of quiet thinking because here in Hong Kong, we have this funky international mix. I have found in such an international place, we have more of a gender equality in people doing extracurriculars than we do in some other more homogenous places. So I feel like part of that is socioeconomic stuff, but a lot of people here who are not from Hong Kong are people who are off making sure that they have time for, like tennis or, I don't know, hacky sack. I feel like that's different in the international hubs I've lived in than some of the other places. So I'm wondering if part of this is about geography as well. I don't know. I'm just question to the universe. Yeah.
Absolutely. I think some countries will be way more traditional than others.
And within that, you do improv where you are in Belgium, but also you travel and perform and teach in other places. Give me a little high level of some of the places that you've gone.
Yes, my most intense course was in Israel. Before that, India. But other than that, I think it's mainly Europe that I've traveled in.
And loaded question. They're all very different, yeah? You feel that the improv community is different, the way that you're received is different, the people coming to the class is very different for the three hubs?
Extremely, yeah. I love it because it challenges me as a teacher, because I really support the fact that as a teacher, you should always be learning. The people who think, I know what I'm teaching now and I know how I'm going to do it, they're not improvising anymore. And I really feel like when you travel to these countries, the first thing you do is you shut up, open your eyes and your ears, and you accept whatever is coming towards you. So I've really tried my own approach there by going to Israel and India and just being quiet and observing and adapting to what the environment gives you.
What were the things that really spoke to you or surprised you or educated you?
In India, the first thing that really hit me, for me really weird, is that people spoke the words arranged marriage as if it was completely normal. Yeah, so when I had my arranged marriage, it's not that they said that, but the way they see that as normal. You have the caste system in India, and even in the first caste, so the most modern Western part of India, that is completely normal. So I asked them questions, and they have websites where parents, like it's Tinder, but for parents to match their kids. That to me is completely absurd, but because I was doing honest monologue work, that influenced my workshop, and I had to accept that that is normal. That is something that people find normal. So that's one example.
How did that fit into the improv? Did you find that the ways that society thinks about marriage played into either the improv teaching or how the improv itself was formed?
Yeah, I was only there for 2 weeks, so I feel too small to say a big thing about their culture. I think other people will be more suited. If I talk to people there, what my impression was that a lot of women stopped doing improv there. I actually spoke to a lot of groups who told me, we cannot keep our women. The women bail from our groups, and usually it's after marriage. And they have this idea, I think it's still the case, that the man has to go out and do the work, bring in the money, and the wife stays home with the kids. I heard it's pretty frowned upon to sometimes have a hobby, to leave your family to go do something for yourself, which is completely different than, I would say, my European culture.
I too know exactly what you're talking about. And equally, I know people who stand on the complete opposite of that, Indian folks who are not at all like that. But you're right, because I think that the people who are more like what it is that we come from, whatever one's background is, are the ones that you kind of filter out because it's the known, and it's the people who are less like your own background that rise to your awareness, and you kind of go like, hang on a minute, what's going on here? So noteworthy because it is so different than our own perspectives or background.
Yes.
Tell me about Israel, which that's how I feel about Israel. Tell me about going there and doing improv there and how that felt different.
To be fair, also there I was in Tel Aviv, which is like, of course, a super modern Western city, which, for example, I heard, I wasn't there per se, but I heard the gay community, for example, it's like huge there. So the fact that even in a country that is known for some orthodox Judaism, for example, the fact that there's such an active gay community shows for me that it's a super diverse country. And I was, of course, teaching in Tel Aviv. I met a lot of people who are very close to European culture. It wasn't such a big cultural difference than what I met in India. The only point there where I was like, wait, what? Was when someone came up to me and said, just so you know, these women cannot touch men in your workshop. And then I'm like, okay, interesting.
All of the women are not allowed to touch, or like those
no,
three people?
Yeah, it's like those. I kind of tried to open the conversation by just saying, who has boundaries here today? Can be physical or mental, like can be any. And then she had like a platform to talk. And then we talked about whose responsibility is it for men and for this to be able to happen. And then we just agreed that it's all of our responsibility. It's not just the woman. It's not the men only. It's also me. Yeah, that was very interesting.
Okay, and then cut back to Europe, wherever it is in Europe that you're doing work. Do you now, and especially with that international context, do your teaching in Europe and either feel like there's a difference from where it is that you live and your teaching and methodology and the other places in Europe? Or are there things now that you look at or think about differently?
I think in Europe, what's happening here is, if you look at, for example, Israel, where we're still very focused on men and women, in Europe, we're actually finally opening up to everything in between. We're finally talking about gender as a scale. And how I'm trying to adapt that in my workshops in Europe is to include, how would you like to be referred to? Are you a he, him, she, her, or something else? That to me is pretty new. And I think some places or some groups are not ready for that conversation yet. I think that's a very European thing to now start really opening up to non-binary people or transgenders. And I love it. I just try to be humble in the topic because I am a straight white woman. And so I try to just be open and learn from it. And you go someplace, you open your eyes and your ears and you adapt to whatever is given.
Yeah. And you mentioned touch in Israel. And this is something that I've noted and thought about before, because touch in improv is something that I have taken for granted before. Not lots of sexy touching with baby oil, but just a touch on the shoulder is totally cozy with me. But as an example, I went to a workshop in the US where at the beginning, in addition to saying your pronouns, it was about if touching was okay. So everyone in a circle said if high fives and handshakes were okay, but it was stated such that you either were okay with high fives and handshakes or you weren't. And like literally there were no other choices. So when we went into this improv jam session, you either did not touch those people. And by the way, you had to clock like 40 people in the room and remember their touching boundaries. So basically set it up as a don't touch people. So you're setting up hopefully an environment of as safe as possible in terms of language. We want to encourage failing and all these things. And then we're also at the same time setting up a boundary, right? Because of different people's comfort zones. From a Euro perspective, probably pretty different.
I teach a very multicultural group in Brussels right now. It's an expat community. So all kinds of countries come together. And we just had this conversation because even in a group of 12, we just honestly admitted, I cannot remember everyone's boundaries. I can't. I simply can't. You don't like to be touched on the butt. You don't like to be hugged. You like to be hugged. You like to be kissed. You don't like to be kissed. How am I free to do improv when I have this list in my head? So we're looking at other rules or other ways to deal with this by not having hard rules, by not going no touching on stage, or a rule everybody can touch on stage. None of these, but to check as you go, because maybe one day I don't feel like a hug and the other day I do. How are you supposed to know if I don't even know? We're looking at other mechanisms to deal with that. For example, one of which is to describe what you want to do to someone. You look at them and you say, I want to kiss you so badly. Say it. And then the other person can say, please don't, not today, I blah, 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 blah. But they can verbally agree or disagree before you do an action, which takes away the whole argument of like, just be honest in the moment in the scene. It's a work in progress.
Yeah. And I think that the conversation, half of it, you know, getting through it and thinking about these things. Within that, I want to ask you, without any hidden agenda, I swear, when you are teaching, is one pushing their culture on someone, their agenda, their perspective? If I'm teaching from my background, am I pushing my agenda of my Western whatever on someone? What do you think?
Nice question. That's my first thought. I am a very honest and open-minded person, more than other people. I am super aware of the fact that I was raised in this culture. So when I state an opinion, always, because I'm also a communication coach, I will always put it in the I perspective. I will always say, this is my belief, and you are free to disagree with me. And how I see things is this way. And I can only speak for me when I say, so I try to really be humble by stating my opinion, but I will never hide my opinion, because I will say it, and then I will be open to discuss it. I will be open to have people against me, to have a discussion about it, because I know some people will disagree. And instead of going, no, it's this way, I will go, interesting, tell me more. Like, I've always tried to be open for different input whilst giving my own input. So I am implying my culture in an open way to be discussed and to have information that teaches me as well. Is that an answer to your question?
It very much is. And it made me think of a follow-up. How does that go with the kids? I feel like kids are so freaking genius and capable, more so than some adults I've met and than we give them credit for. When you do that with the kids, does it just lead to this never-ending discussion?
I want to say so many things. With the kids, it's so different because, at least in my school, we don't have super long discussions. There's not a lot of fighting. For example, if I give feedback to the kids, let's say one of the kids was super dominant in a scene, super self-centered and pushed everyone away, then my feedback will be like, knowing you, I see a super strong boy who just did this and this and this, and that was great. Now, I wonder, which is a very important verb, I wonder what the scene would look like if I heard your character, the other character, speak more. I wonder what that would be like. Can we try that? Can we try a scene where you give space to this other person? So I try to switch it into the I perspective. I see this, and I wonder, rather than saying, you did this, change it. That's my vision on everyone, kids or adults. I can only speak from my perspective and invite someone to change something rather than saying, you're doing it wrong, man.
The way that you phrased that was really beautiful, by the way, because you both lent what you wanted to have happen, gave direction for what we could do going forward, and also didn't push it on someone. So there was this really beautiful trifecta of teaching happening. Do you find that the kids push back on that, or are they like, yeah, okay, I got that, cool?
Like adults, they get defensive. Okay. And they will say things like, yeah, but this other person didn't speak, or something like that. And then I'm like, interesting. Let's see what happens if we give them more time. I know you're going to get defensive, so I'm open to the argument that's going to come my way. I just invite. I think the more you push and the more you imply something on someone, whether they're kids or adults, the more they'll fight back. I've had a kid who said, we were doing famous people, and someone said Martin Luther King. Someone asked, who's Martin Luther King? And this kid, 14-year-old, said, he's an oogala boogala man who jumped out of the bushes and said, I want rights. So I'm like, hang on. So first I corrected, I gave the right information about Martin Luther King. And then my mind went, I need time to see how I'm going to deal with this. So I just said, we're going to talk in the break so everybody else knows. The whole group heard I'm going to address impress you later. And I was buying myself some time. Even with this boy who in the end turned out to have these racist views from his father, I didn't go, you don't do that. You don't say things like that. This is wrong. I went, why did you say that? He's like, oh, it was a joke. Oh, okay. If we had black boys in our group or black girls in our group, would you make the same joke? No, I know, of course not. Like, I'm not an idiot. I would never do that. So, okay, so it's okay to make this joke when they're not here, but it wouldn't be okay to make that joke when they are here. How do you feel about that? And then the kid just goes, and that's what I want to reach. I don't want to change him. I just want him to think and be aware of these things. If I would have said, you don't do that, I don't reach anything. Then he knows how to behave with me. That doesn't teach him any hardcore values. But when I make him realize what he's doing by questioning it in an open way and just explain it to me, what is oogla boogla? What does it mean? And then he goes, oh, it's because they have such big lips. That's all they can say is oogla boogla. And I'm like, oh, okay. Is this a fact? Is this something you know for sure? Or is this something in your head? And then he goes, yeah, no, of course, I'm exaggerating. I'm like, oh, okay, interesting. Like, I just challenge them by asking questions to make them think. That's what we need to do with kids, is question. Question me as an authority. Question each other. Question truth. Question your parents. I got a little bit drifted off, but is that an answer to your question?
Yeah. It's in the moment with you. I've dropped into it physically. Charlie, if you wanted to share some words of wisdom, what might they be? You can speak to the younger version of you, your improv community peers, people who find this video, they're curious about improv. What do you want them to know?
In the frame of this conversation, always find ways to stay in touch with your inner child. We are getting so many rules to live by. Oh my God, we are being so hard on ourselves as improvising teachers. I first had the idea that I had to be able to master everything. I have to be excellent at mime, excellent verbal jokes, excellent at everything. And the one thing that makes me a good teacher, if I may say so, is that I know how to spark my inner child. That child with all that fantasy is here. And sometimes it feels far away, but I know what to do to call for it. And I wish all the improvisers out there to find ways to stay in touch with that inner child. It's not always easy, and sometimes it comes super easy, but find a way to spark your inner child and you will be happy. And when you're happy, the audience is having a good time as well.
Oh, that's gorgeous. And finally, how can people find you? So they have watched this, they know that you're a genius, they want to come and watch a show, take a class, have you come to them, to their land and teach things. How do folks find ya?
Find ya.
Yeah.
Well, my website is in Flemish. My company is called Zeg het is, which is tell me in English. It's like, what's up, tell me. But I'm sure if they Google Prism, which is my trio that I'm traveling with, then they will find me. So Google Prism, Google Zeg het is, and you will find Charlotte De Metsenaere. That's me.
Brilliant. Okay. I will put the links below so you can use translation tools or learn Flemish if you want to. Thank you
Thank you so much.
Oh, it was wonderful getting to chat with you and meet, I think, some sparkly parts of your inner child. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
All right, everyone, this is Improving the World, and there's more where that came from. Thanks all. Bye. So, did you love the video? If you did, please say kind and beautiful things in the comments down below. And you could subscribe if you're feeling super sassy. And look for more Improving the World.